What's going on? We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Wednesday, and we have the good fortune to have a guest on the program today, a returning guest. Her name is Maddie. She was on some time ago. And I just want to preface this in saying, and there's a reason for why I'm identifying this. Maddie is in Michigan, and she is transgendered. Transgender, no ED, right?
Yeah.
You
correct.
corrected me on that last time. But I mentioned that because we'll be talking about some of those topics with the new Speaker of the House. As I told Maddie, I'm a big, dumb, white, heterosexual guy sitting in my living room. I don't know much about these things. I have opinions, but it's nice having somebody who understands what's up and what's going on. So first of all, Maddie, thank you for coming back. I appreciate it immensely.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back. Sorry it took so long. It's been about a year, but
Oh, it's all right. Whenever you feel comfortable, that's what I tell people. If you feel comfortable, send me an email. Let's do it. Now, Maddie, you said before we went on here that you had an answer to a question that came up in the last show. I don't know what the question is. Certainly don't know what the answer is. So enlighten us.
one person wrote in after the last episode when I was talking about the rape I went through
Mm-hmm.
and asked whether or not the person who perpetrated the rape against me was ever brought to justice. Unfortunately, the answer is no, but at this point, it's one of those things I'm not wanting to go to court on because she is nothing. She lived with her parents until she was in her 40s. Her last baby daddy died in a drug deal gone wrong. So what's the point? Her life is enough hell.
Now, this happened to you when? Was it when you were a child or were?
I was about 7 to 8 years old.
Okay. Okay. And let me ask you a dumb question. That obviously is a life-changing experience, emotionally, maybe even physically. How do you feel like it changed your life when that happened? I mean, did you go from one path to a new path because of that incident?
Absolutely. The path I went down was a very, very dark one. It took me until well into my 30s to finally be willing to start to deal with that path and correct and come back into a path where I'm happy and my life is going quite well. I have a
Perfect.
great family and I have three wonderful children and a beautiful granddaughter
Nice. I love
who
granddaughters.
she's about to be she'll be 2 in March, and I just love spending so much time with her and just how funny and precocious she is already.
Yeah, I can relate to that completely. I've talked to my 3-year-old granddaughter. She was over a couple days ago, and we were in the pool together, throwing the ball together and splashing each other in the face and just having a great time. Even my son was looking at me. Who the fuck is that guy? I don't remember him doing that with me. But let me ask you this. And I know the answer to this question because I understand enough about LGBTQ and that sort of thing. People will ask you that incident in your life, that rape that you suffered in 7 or 8 years old. Do you feel like that had any effect on your ultimate sexuality?
I think the effect that it did have was fracturing my understanding of who I was at that young of an age because I didn't understand anything about it, or I hadn't even really given much overall thought to my gender other than a few.
Well, sure. Who thinks about sex at 7?
Yeah. And so everything became really fractured and I didn't understand who I was. And I think had that not happened, I probably would have came to terms with who I was more than likely probably by my 20s
Okay.
instead of my 30s.
When you think back to that time, when you were 7 or 8, granted, that kind of mindset. I mean, when I was 7 or 8, I'm sure I wasn't thinking about girls yet. I was thinking about girl germs, but not girls in that sense. Um, do you think? No, I forgot what the fuck I was going to ask you. Um, so what you're saying is about this incident. This may have had an effect on you emotionally, generally, not just sexually speaking, because at that time you didn't know anything about sex. So it
Yeah,
it wasn't identified to you as such. It just seemed weird.
yeah, and it affected my overall outlook on who I was and life in general, not who I was attracted to or what I was attracted to or who I identified as a person. It just made those things something that I couldn't emotionally deal with because I was too busy suppressing all the feelings that I had from what happened all those times.
Let me ask you this. We have a new Speaker of the House, this Mike Johnson guy. Just looking at him, he's a weirdo. There's something off about him. There's going to be a lot of stuff in his background that is going to come out. But when you hear a guy like that in a position of power talking about the way things he does regarding LGBTQ or transgender folks, how does that make you feel? And are you more concerned now than you ever have been in the future of this country?
I am incredibly concerned that he is in the position he is in. The one, I guess, good thing that I can see from it is when you're thrust into the spotlight, all your blemishes come out,
Right,
and
right,
a person, most people who are that hardcore against a particular group like that are hiding certain skeletons in their closets.
I never understood that. Somebody who may be actually gay and then is so against LGBTQ. If that were me, I would avoid the topic completely. I don't need, I don't understand the mentality of it. If I'm gay and I say I hate gays, why would I even identify as somebody who hates them? The last thing I'd want to do is talk about and bring any attention to the whole topic, but they do it every time.
I think it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy in the sense that these people hate the gay so much inside them that they hate other people who are that way. And probably because the way I heard it on a TikTok one day, I forget who said it, but these type of Christian fundamentalists and these deeply disturbed people that want to thrust religion down everybody's throats and make us be just like them, like your Marjorie Taylor Greens, your
Right.
Lauren Boeberts. They they do that because they they are in a sense following one of their core tenets of their religion, but they're doing it backwards.
Right.
They love you as they love themselves, and they hate themselves so much because their whole religion tells them to hate themselves.
Right. Right.
And that's not to say Christianity in a general sense, that's these particular ones, they hate other people so much because they hate themselves because they think they're worthless too and they don't deserve to be happy. So nobody can be happy.
I don't have a problem with Christianity or Muslims or Buddhist. I have a problem with the churches, which are basically clubs started and run by humans who are notably fallible, and they tend to get greedy and they tend to want power, and then they take the message, hide behind that message, and use it to wield whatever narrative they want to fucking yield. And that's why, when I say I'm not religious, I'm not religious in the sense that I don't like clubs started by other fucking idiot humans like me. Uh, if you want to believe in God, if you believe in God, it's easy enough to just go direct. I don't need. I've always said that
Yep.
people say, why don't you go to church? And I said, well, you know, in the Bible, it says you can talk to God directly. And that seems to be the best way to do it. I kind of look at it as like, say you're getting spring water from a mountain. If you take the water directly from the mountain, it's pure and clean. But if you take that water after it's run through a rusty pipe or a fallible human, it's not as good. It's not the same. And so that's always been the premise. You know, the thing with people in LGBTQ folks and transgender folks, I almost don't think it's hate as much as it's fear. And I don't know what it is they fear, but they act like they're fearful, not hateful. The hateful part of it is just to cover up the fear. You know, Republicans are known for using this bully tactics, and it's everything about Republicans is fucking fear. So I think it's the same with the LGBTQ. I could be wrong, and you'd be the one to tell me if I'm wrong.
A lot of it is fear, and it's fear of somebody discovering who they truly are. And like, even before I came out, we discussed it last time, I don't think I would, had I continued down my path long time ago, I could have turned into a MAGA. And
Wow.
it pains me to say that. But it all came about because I started to deal with the pain and the hurt inside me rather than wanting to shove that pain and hurt and fear of somebody knowing who I was as a transgender person. So I kept them from knowing me as a person.
Right. Right.
That was just buried even deeper underneath it. And I just became the person I saw men around me being at the time, because I'm a millennial, but I'm an elder millennial. And I have an older brother. So I was much more around the Gen X
Right.
life and everything. So I know what it's like to get beaten up by a sibling or different people, and it's not something I'd like to go through again. So I always hid who I truly was so nobody would hurt me.
Now that you are where you are, you said you're in a good place right now. Um, Based on what you had throughout your whole life up to this point, how are things different now? Why are they better now?
Because I stopped hating who I was. I stopped hating who I was as a person. Started going to therapy, started getting help, talking through the pain and the trauma that I went through rather than keeping that inside. And that helped me just release all of that, which allowed my wife to finally fall back in love with who I was rather than the jerk I was becoming.
Right. So do you think it has a lot to do with you finally being able to be true to who you are? That you're comfortable now as opposed to where you've been all these years?
Yeah. And I have an IT background, so I think very much in technology. So the way I say it is, it's like having a computer with a virus on it. That's just sucking up all of the memory so the computer can't function properly.
Right.
And the second you get that virus out of there, those resources can be reapplied to run the basic program so your computer can function again. And brain is similar to a computer. And so I just was finally able to offload that memory and reallocate the space to better things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I want to, you know, one of the things the main thing we talk about on this show is politics and such. I wanted to reintroduce you to the folks that listen, because I think we all have a lot to learn from any listener that comes on the show. They all come from different parts of life and they all have different experiences and perceptions. And you're certainly one of those folks. So I'm glad we can identify where you're coming from on this show. But let's talk a little bit of politics. Have you been hearing about these polls that are out, and the polls that are saying Donald Trump would beat Joe Biden in 5 5 swing states in an election. Have you heard those?
I've heard those, and I live in Michigan, one of those swing states, and I don't hear that anywhere in the state.
Not from
I
the
mean,
people.
yeah, we have our pockets. Yeah, we have our pockets. Every state's going to have red more out in the rural area, but I go into any populated area, even smallly populated areas like the town I live in. I live outside, like 11 miles outside of one of the bigger cities,
Mhm.
not like one of our metropolitan cities, but one of our bigger ones. And the town I'm in has a couple of pizza places, a book shop, just your basic small town experience.
Right.
And the local general store has Ukraine flags and
Wow.
LGBT flags flying all the time. And we're close to the sticks. So I've been seeing a lot of positive change, and I don't trust those polls. I've given up trusting polls since 2018.
Well, I
Any
said,
national poll is a joke.
well, I've said in TikToks that in 2011 the polls told us Barack Obama would lose. In 2016 they told us Hillary Clinton would win. In 2020 they told us that Donald Trump would win. In 2022 they told us there would be a red wave. Not one of them was accurate. And we're too far out from the election. I mean,
Yeah,
that's why I say I don't know who's funding these polls. I don't know who they're calling or why they're calling. I mean, I said on the podcast, I said I'm going to make a new poll right now. It'll be the Rational Boomer poll, just pulling it out of my ass, which is no different than anybody else. And I'm going to tell you right now, Joe Biden is going to win in the landslide. The Democrats will take the House and the Senate. That's my fucking poll, and it's just as good as the shit you're hearing out there. Um, but the thing about it is today was an interesting test, or yesterday was an interesting test on those polls and how people are truly feeling about the Republicans and the Democrats. We had 2 races. We actually had 3. I don't know what the end result of the third one is, but we had the governor's race in Kentucky, very red state. Andy Beshear is the governor. He's Democrat. He's actually, I think he's probably a prospect for president sometime down the road. But he was up against the attorney general, an African American man who was a raging Trumplafuck, who was endorsed by Donald Trump. And they were going head to head today, and everybody was concerned about the Democrat. Oh no, he might get beat. A Trump person will come in. Turns out Andy Beshear was reelected. And in spite of all the shit we're hearing about how much momentum the Republicans have, they fucking lost. That's why I say the proof's in the pudding. You can have all the bullshit you want, but when it comes down to people voting, that tells us what's true.
I've learned that the only polls that you can even offsides trust would be like a local poll in your town,
Yeah.
or just like a local election or a local district or something like that, because they're going to poll the people in the town. But all these national ones, like you said, we don't know who's paying for it. We don't know what questions they asked. We don't know how those questions were worded. And people like me and technology and Gen Zers like to screw with things
Well, I
and
had an
like
email.
to.
I had an emailer yesterday on the show, and he said, I'll just tell you what goes on. I am on a list and I get calls about taking these polls, and I'm all the way a Democrat, but they'll pay me 150, they'll screen me and they'll pay me $150. And he says, I'll tell you what, I'm a fucking Republican for 1 day a year, and I make $150. So you can't fault him for that. And that just tells you what the credibility of these fucking polls are.
Yeah, the only thing that troubles me with it is when the far left starts buying into it and everything, like with all the stuff that's going on with Gaza, and they're saying they're not going to vote for Biden or they won't vote. one, we know what the outcome of that is. 2016. That
Right.
showed us exactly what would happen. But two, it's one of those, it's only 2023. Why are we
Right.
even discussing the presidential election next year? So much is going to happen between now and then. So much has happened in just the past couple of weeks.
Right. Right.
And why are we just having this discussion? We need to start we need to fight the battles that we can that are happening now. And if you don't like the way the president's responding to Gaza, write, call, do your civic duty, try to influence the decisions. But
Well,
just saying, screw it, I'm going to take my ball and go home, it's like, I might as well call you a MAGA.
right. Yeah. Who are you going to vote for? You're going to vote for somebody who supported Israel because they happen to be an ally, or are you going to support the people that attempted a coup on this country? That's your fucking option there. But you bring up a good point. The whole Gaza thing. We had news reports coming out that say, "Oh, all the young people hate Joe Biden now because he's siding with Israel." The millennials and the Gen Zs. You're a millennial. How do you feel about Joe Biden backing Israel? Does it make you angry?
I mean, I'm not happy about what Israel's doing. That part makes me incredibly angry. I do believe in a two state and
Right.
that things need to be shared between them. But this, I'm also very pragmatic. I understand this war has been going back for decades, hundreds of years, and some could even argue multiple millennia. It could potentially have been going on since pre BC.
Right. Right.
I mean, these people in this area of the world have been fighting for hundreds of thousands of years. How is not voting for Biden next election going to change that? At least he's trying to send the Palestinians aids. At least he's trying to hold the leash on Israel as much as he can. You get a Republican in there, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to let Israel loose and just say, level Gaza.
Yeah. Well, the thing about it is, and this is where I get the sense that these stories that come out that Donald Trump could beat Biden in some swing states, or the millennials and the Gen Zs are mad at Joe Biden. He's going to lose in 2024 because he's siding with Israel. We've seen it in the past. We know the Republicans do everything. The main strategy in every presidential election is try to smear their opponent. They don't deal in policy or facts. They did it with Hillary. They did it with Joe. They're doing it with Joe again. That's just how the fuck they do it. And they did it with Clinton as well, and Barack. He wasn't born in America. That's all they do is try to smear people. So the idea that somebody would leak or insert these kind of ridiculous stories into the narrative isn't out of the realm of possibility. In fact, it's right in line with how Republicans behave. And this has always been my problem. Just because it shows up on the news doesn't mean you believe it. You got to look into it. You got to be smarter than falling for clickbait.
Yeah, the news is going, everybody's like, well, this side is slanted this way, that side is slanted that way. I'm like, every news source is slanted one direction or another. You have to go into reading these stories, understanding that these news sources are out to make a buck.
Right.
And panic sells.
Absolutely. Panic,
And
fear.
it's like, I remember during the 2020 election, I was hooked, like almost hook, line, and sinker to the TV watching CNN because they had me all panicked. But I hadn't really found TikTok yet. I hadn't found these other sources where I could get other opinions and start seeing the flow of information and start seeing it more of the raw information and less of the filtered information.
I think one of the things that confounds Donald Trump and the Republicans about the 2020 election, Donald Trump, in fact, got more votes in 2020 than he did in 2016. Joe Biden got 7 million more, 81 million votes. And based on that, that's where they think there was some fraud in it, because there was more votes than ever before. They aren't smart enough to realize the reason there were more votes is because people were terrified that Donald Trump would get to be president again. There was no hocus pocus going on getting more votes. It was Donald Trump and the Republicans scaring enough people to say, fuck it, I'm voting. And they can't grasp that. And I know when I talk about the things I talk about here, people say, shh, don't say that. We want to keep people afraid so they go out and vote. Well, if you're in this world and you've seen what's going on now, if I have to give you phony fear to get you to vote, that's pretty pitiful. I mean, at some point, people have to be big people, put on their big people pants and do what they're fucking supposed to do. I mean, I don't know if you noticed, I got my I voted sticker on today. And, all we voted on was school board members and a referendum. And but you got to do it. You got to participate. And hopefully combination of fear and duty to the country, we will get a massive turnout in 2024. And if that happens, the Republicans are done.
Yeah, and I didn't vote today because our district didn't have anything to vote on in Michigan. Michigan votes we voted in 2022 for a lot of stuff.
Right.
And so we didn't have anything today. But yeah, we need to, but I think Gen Z's gotten the message, and they don't seem to be falling for even the far left with the doom and gloom. They're just like, we know what we got to do. We know there's doom and gloom. We got to deal with it. And I like far left ideas. I really do. I understand them. I get it. But Rome wasn't built in a day.
Right.
And right now, the Overton window is way too far to the right. We have to drag that back to the left before we can start getting some of this stuff.
Well, that's a good point. I prefer, personally, I think we have to go farther left to get back to center. We've gone so far right. It's like being on a snowy road in Michigan or Minnesota. Your car slides to the right, you overcorrect to the left, and then you have to overcorrect to the right, and then you finally hopefully get in the middle again. It takes some adjustments, and I think we need to go further left to get us back to center, which is where we normally are. And the far left of this country, the AOCs, the Tlaibs, people like that, they frustrate me because they're working against their own self-interest by doing the things they're doing. Like for instance, there was just a report that the House voted to censure Representative Tlaib for her comments about Palestine. I realize she's Palestinian. I realize she's passionate about it, but she has to realize the position she's in. In a situation like that, in my mind, I would say, try to be diplomatic about this. You've got people who you represent that don't agree with your standpoint. They don't even know what the argument's about. Don't go off half-cocked and get pissed at Joe Biden because he's siding with Israel. Granted, Israel may be guilty of a lot of things, but they are our allies, and we are kind of required to back our allies. That's just the way it is. And Hamas is a fucking terrorist organization. The unfortunate thing is there's a lot of innocent people in between that are collateral damage, and there's where the issue starts. But we talk about unity, and there is none in the Republican Party. And to be perfectly honest, we lack some unity in the Democrats too, with the crazy left. I won't say crazy left, but the way left people and the moderate people. There's got to be a happy medium between them, because I'd like to see us go more left, but I don't want to see us get militant about this shit because we've got something bigger to fix.
Yeah, like I said, Rome wasn't built in a day. Biden can't flip a switch and change everything. And
no,
Biden, like you said, there are allies. And part of being an ally is we are required by treaty to do certain things in certain situations, unfortunately. And Biden can't ignore that because treaties are signed by Congress.
Right, exactly.
So he is bound to help them in certain sense, and I personally think that's part of why we've sent carrier strike groups over there, is also to remind Israel who really has the power, and it's not
Right.
really them.
Well, and that's the thing is Biden's not going over there and saying, okay, Israel, let's kick their ass. Here's a bunch of stuff. We'll get in there and attack it. What Biden is actually doing, he's trying to quell this thing. He's responsible for getting resources to the Palestinian citizens that are without water and without electricity. That wouldn't happen without Joe Biden. Yes, we're supporting Israel, but it's what he's doing is actually a humanitarian mission. He's trying to avoid, 300,000 Israelis going into Palestine or the Gaza Strip and starting this fucking mess of a war. Do I think Israel has done some horrific things? Probably. I think Hamas has done some horrible things. Let's be fucking honest. War is horrible in general. America has done some horrible things while in war.
Absolutely. And not only that, what people forget is it's the civilians that get caught in the middle, the unfortunate Ukrainians. Nobody asked them what they wanted. The Palestinians and the Israeli citizens, they weren't asked what they wanted in all this. They didn't want Hamas to launch rockets. They didn't want Israel to do a ground invasion. But one thing to keep in mind too with the carrier strike groups is those are very, very effective for humanitarian aid because they can act as medical ships. They can help with power. They can treat seawater to get water to these people. They can do so many good things. And people are like, oh, we're just over there flexing our muscle. It's like, yeah, but we're using that muscle for good.
Well, and flexing our muscle is for good to a certain extent. It's like anything else when you have a threat like that, of that magnitude, that oftentimes is a deterrent. You might go off half cocked and half crazy, but when you got all these carriers out there knowing they could obliterate you, you maybe stop and think twice about it. And I think that's what Joe Biden wants to happen. Settle down. Let's figure this out diplomatically. We support Israel. We don't like the terrorist of Hamas, but there's a lot of people in the middle that need to be taken care of. And that's kind of our job in this country. No one else is going to do it. So we must do it in spite of the fact the Republicans don't want us to do it. We've always done it. We're in a position to do it. We should do it.
Yeah, the Republicans would just dump Israel with some of our most powerful weapons and say, have fun.
Right.
Do whatever you want to do and walk away and let all the Palestinian people suffer. And I think people, when they get so hardcore in a direction, they start to miss the forest through the trees. They need to step back a little bit and see this happens every 3 to 4 years. It's like clockwork. There's a lot more that needs to be done in this area to get this all to stop. So we don't have that much control in the world. Yeah, we have a lot, but we don't have that much. We can't tell Israel what to do flat out.
No, we can't. And, I heard somebody being interviewed, and for the life of me, I can't remember who it was, but it was somebody of authority. And what they said was they see what's going on in Ukraine and in the Gaza Strip is basically a war against the United States. And let me explain what he meant by that. Vladimir Putin's going into Ukraine, and we know that if we don't stop him in Ukraine, he's going to keep going to Poland and other NATO countries, and then we've got a huge World War III mess. So it's important for us to help Ukraine and shut this shit down. Now you've got the Israeli and the Hamas situation, and we know that there is likely some coordination from Iran and possibly Russia. We know that Donald Trump, in fact, gave Israeli information to Russian spies. That actually happened some time back, but it did happen. Some people are suggesting, this person was suggesting, that this is a ploy by Russia just to create division and discontent in this country, to upset our government. And guess what? It's fucking working. And there may be something to that. They're fucking around in Ukraine. They divert our attention from Ukraine to Israel. The country is separated or divided as to what they feel about the Israelis and Hamas and the Palestinians. And basically all that's happening is they're putting our government in chaos and our people divided. So when this guy said this, I thought, it sounds crazy, but that's kind of actually what's happening right now. And it may be that insidious, maybe that less obvious, but very typical of what Russians might do. We've seen what they've done with the elections. It wouldn't be crazy to think that they're somehow looking at the long game with the United States of America in these situations, knowing they'd have to be involved.
And that's why I make the argument to the people on the far left that Republicans and all these people, they are very good at playing the long game.
Right.
They have been playing chess for the past 40 years in this country to slowly weaken us. And if you look at demographics and how people are connecting, how we saw the uprise in Iran, how we've seen all these fascist religious regimes getting pushed back against, I think they all know that their window is closing fast. So this is their last ditch effort, because you see Russia is on the verge of collapse.
Right.
You see the population numbers in China, they are on the verge of collapse. And North Korea is always on the verge of collapse.
Well, and you look at the Republican Party, they're on the verge of collapse. And when somebody's on the verge of collapse, they start flailing, doing anything and doing everything. That's what we're seeing out of the Republican Party. And we're kind of seeing out of Russia too. I mean, Vladimir Putin's apparently not physically well. The country, as you say, is on the verge of collapse. So they're just throwing shit against the wall like a monkey, hoping something sticks. And they're just going to try everything. And then when that happens, the likes of Donald Trump, the Republicans, Vladimir Putin, Benjamin Netanyahu, for that matter, and Hamas, they're just fucking doing anything. They are panicking because they know the end is near, because they can't sustain what they've been doing for all these years. It's falling apart underneath them.
And it kind of goes back. And one thing that I think about with that is how in this country they say Michigan's a battleground state, Pennsylvania's a battleground state, and all these other different states. It's like we're actually starting to see, like, Michigan finally got rid of gerrymandering and has been steadily progressing further and further left. Minnesota is further and further left. And it's getting to the point where we're starting to see headway in, like, Georgia. We're starting to see headway in North and South Carolina. It's like, I think these southern states are going to become the battleground states in the near future. And the current battleground states, I think, are probably going to settle out into blue.
Yeah. And, you know,
I mean, we even saw Texas almost flip.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wouldn't be surprised if they ultimately do. But when we were talking about the abortion issue, you know, when they took it to the voters in South Carolina, in Arkansas, and now today or yesterday in Ohio, as red as those states are, and as much as the Republicans wanted to outlaw abortion, the vast majority of their constituents said, fuck no, we're making abortion illegal or legal. And this is driving the Republicans nuts. They didn't, if you remember this, putting this question up for election, they did everything they could to try to keep it off the ballot because they knew they were going to fucking lose. But it didn't work out for them. It showed up, and the Ohio constituents showed up and they said, fuck no, you're wrong about this. You know, I might like Donald Trump, but we are not voting to outlaw abortion. That's fucking crazy. So it's good to see. I think that's a sign of things to come in this country, of a shift, not even so much for blue, just a more humanitarian attitude amongst the country. I mean, you could be a Republican of old and still have some humanitarian concerns. The current Republican Party bears no resemblance to what it once was, and there is no humanitarian concern at all in the Republican Party. It's just what I want, what I need, and we'll do whatever it takes to get it done.
And unfortunately for a lot of the Republicans, because we've been seeing a lot of Republicans older Republicans saying that they're not running again because they don't like the direction it's going. And it's like, well, a little late, guys. You got the stank all over you. You can't come back. Whereas I could see people like Mitt Romney and maybe Adam Kinzinger and everything be able to resurrect from the ashes of the Republican and build a new Republican Party. But that's going to take probably about 20 years at least to rebuild something like that.
And it doesn't seem like they're ready to do that yet, which amazes me. I really think that it's going to take a serious ass whooping in 2024 before they say, maybe we should change it up. I mean, they're that thick-skulled where it's going to take that before they actually change things up. And you're right, it's going to take forever for them to reimagine or rehabilitate their image and get people to trust them again and get decent people that are politicians. The Republicans have been destroyed by Donald Trump, and for whatever reason, they can't conceive of that as yet. It's still not something they understand. Well, people like you and I understand it's already destroyed. It's no coming back. They're going to have to rebuild.
Yeah, apparently the spanking in 2022 wasn't hard enough.
Yeah.
I've come to believe that the Republican Party has become masochist. They seem to enjoy this because, and it's not just the Republican Party. It seems like everybody on the far right, from religion through politics, just seems to really like having their entire reputation and image just dragged.
They really do. I mean, like Jim Jordan with all these hearings, every hearing he gets embarrassed. So what's his answer to that? Have another fucking hearing. He gets embarrassed when he's up for election for Speaker of the House. Let's do it again. He gets embarrassed again. Let's do it one more time. I agree with you. It's really a confusing thing watching these people really embracing being embarrassed day after day. Is it because they enjoy that, or is it because they think they're the people that support them are too stupid to realize it? They think the noise they're making has more of an impact than the actual end result, which is a joke. I don't know. It's just weird.
I think sometimes they see themselves as martyrs and they're just going to ride this ship down, not realizing they're sitting on the SS pile of shit that they're going to the bottom of the sea on.
Yeah.
It's like you're not riding the Titanic down in some playing your violins to the last moment as the Titanic slips beneath the sea and all romantic. It's like, no, you're on a trash barge, dude, and you're going down.
Absolutely. Well, Maddie, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about Donald Trump. We're going to talk about this lawsuit in New York because that's starting to heat up. And as we sit here today, Ivanka Trump is going to testify. I'm sure you have some insights and some thoughts on that. So we will take a quick break, and we will be right back. We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. We have a guest today, listener Maddie. This is the second time she's been on. Always glad to have her back. You're going to have to do this more often. You're getting lazy here. One time a year just isn't going to cut it. I need more help than that. But I'm glad you're here today. And when we took the break, I said we're going to talk about the lawsuit in New York, the civil suit, Donald Trump's performance on the stand, and the fact that Ivanka Trump is testifying today. You seem pretty excited about talking about that. What's up with that?
I'm just loving the whole case. The whole thing has just made me laugh the past few weeks, especially the whole thing with him being on the stand and how he just lashed out. I was the first thing that anybody knows, you don't piss off a judge ever.
You don't piss off a
Any
judge.
judge.
Well, especially since this judge is going to make the decision. There is no jury. I don't know who he's doing this performance for, but he's pissing off the judge, and this judge is going to decide how badly his ass is going to get kicked. They seem to think, Eric and Donald seem to think that they're going for guilty or not guilty here. They've already established that they're guilty. Now it's a matter of what kind of penalty they're going to get. The fact that Donald Trump is behaving like this, I'm not surprised. That's how he does. I mean, we would have known this in 2015 and 2016 if the media had done their job and cornered that fucker instead of letting him just say anything and letting him get away with it. Put him in the corner and say, what do you mean by that? What about this? And put the pressure on. But they didn't. And he ended up where he ended up. But now that he's in court, he doesn't have that leeway. He doesn't have that deferential treatment that he got from the media. Court is court. Judges are judges. And they aren't listening to that shit.
Yeah. And not only that, I think some of it with him flying off the handle there, and I've even come to think that how he is slipping up and having more and more senior moments with his speeches. I think it's less he's legit, like has like Alzheimer's or some dementia or something. I think it's more he's a narcissist and his entire reality is fracturing around him and he cannot put it back together, and that's causing it to fracture more and more. And usually when a narcissist's reality fractures, there's only one of two outcomes. They either come to terms with what happened or they delude themselves into a padded room.
Yeah, my experience with narcissists is one of two things. They start flailing and they become dangerous. And I think we're at that stage with Donald Trump. The last thing they do when there's no way out and all their strategies don't work, they fucking bolt. They run away. Now, he's not really in a position to run away because he can't go anywhere in this country and have nobody recognize him. And people always say, well, he'll flee the country. And I say, I don't think that's likely because Secret Service is a law enforcement arm of the government. It would be their responsibility to detain him if he was going to break a law, and that would be leaving the country. And people say, yeah, but there's people in the Secret Service that like Donald Trump. And that may be true. But if they're going to let Donald Trump flee, they better go fucking with him because they're going to come up with some pretty serious scrutiny here and probably go to jail themselves because they were part and parcel to allowing a criminal to flee the country. I just don't see him fleeing because he's not brave enough to do something that serious.
And I think once that comes to mind to flee, I think that'll be when they put the handcuffs on him.
Yeah.
I think he'll ride it to that point to where he's going to prison. There's nothing he can do. They're putting the bracelets on him and he's gone. That's when he's like, I want to run. I want to get out of here. And because he's not smart enough to know when to get out, because if that was the case, he would have probably never have ran for president.
Right, exactly. The thing about it is I've said about 100 times on this show and on TikTok that I think this case that's going on, the civil case going on in New York, they're going to have Ivanka testify today. The prosecution will end its case. Now the defense will have to put on that case. That should be entertaining. A couple of guys on their list are Don Jr. and Eric. Yeah, let's put those motherfuckers up again. They did so well the first time. But I think this is going to be the most devastating by virtue of the fact that he is a narcissist. I mean, you can threaten to put somebody in jail, but a narcissist will never believe he's going to jail. Once you've taken everything that he identifies with away from him, his money, his property, his power, his prestige, once you take that all away and he's nothing more than a shell, that will destroy a narcissist as much or more than putting him in jail. And then at that point, when he starts going to the criminal trials, he'll be, like I said, he'll be like a dead bug being crushed under a tennis shoe, because there'll be nothing left of it.
Yeah, because this case, I mean, the criminal cases are different, but this case is attacking who he is as a person and this facade that he has created over his entire life of, I'm a billionaire, I'm a billionaire. And now that it's all coming out, he keeps saying it, but nobody's buying it anymore. And I see Donald Trump as the kind of person that would sit on a penny and say he's the richest man in the world.
Right, right. And who he is and the perception of who he is the first and foremost important thing in his small and broken mind. I mean, you'll see it when they're talking about this court case. He doesn't talk about the fraud as much. He'll say, I'm really a billionaire. You just don't know it. These properties are worth 10 times much as what they are. His main concern is people not realizing that he's a broke ass bitch, that he wants them to believe he's a billionaire still. And that's the most important thing right now to him. But that's not the thing that's going to take him down. But he doesn't care. It's all about perception with a narcissist.
Yeah, and people on the right, they would be like, well, it'll all get overturned in appeal and everything. It's like, one thing that I heard from Hawk was, for him to even file his appeal, he has to put whatever the judgment is up first as bond.
Right.
So he can't just file appeal and get an appeal like he would in a criminal case. If they find him guilty and fine him $500 million, he has to put that up in cash to even file his appeal. And
right.
I mean, no matter how rich somebody might be on paper, most of that's tied up in their assets, not in their liquid cash.
Well, and that's the thing that's going to happen here. They're going to have a receiver handling all this stuff. He's not going to have the cash to pay the $250 million, or as Michael Cohen suggested, maybe $600 million. He doesn't have the cash. So between the receivership and him, they're going to have to start liquidating shit. And they may have to liquidate everything because all his properties are losers. They're not making money. So that doesn't make them a prime profit-making thing. And the whole idea of the Trump brand premium, that's not a thing anymore. I mean, let's be honest. If Trump did have a brand that deserved a premium, the minute he sold it and the name Trump came off the building, that premium isn't a thing anymore. So it's all fucking ridiculous. I mean, it's all childish fucking excuses. But the appeal thing, the other thing to consider about appeals, think of how many appeals Donald Trump has done since 2020. Just on the election alone, there's 60 of them. There's all kinds of appeals for all kinds of decisions in these criminal cases. He hasn't won one. He hasn't won one appeal. So why should we be worried about this appeal? I didn't know what you said that Hawk said, that he's still got to put up the money in order to appeal it. That's crazy. That makes it impossible for him. That puts him in a spot he just can't work out of. Well, let me ask you this, though.
Because he said that with Eugene Carroll, he had to put up the money that was he was found guilty of in that case to file the appeal.
Right. Well, let me ask you this. He no way has $250 million in cash or more. I wonder if then he can put up his property as collateral for that $250 million. I don't know. but he's caught between a rock and a hard
Hard to
place, and
say.
he's going to be hard to get out of that shit. What do you think
And
Ivanka's going to do
it would
today?
really come down. I think she's going to try to. I think she's going to try to do a lot what her brothers did, just try to plead ignorance, try to get out of it, say, hey, I haven't been part of it since 2016 and everything. So I don't know what's been going on in all this part. Because she seems to be wanting to distance herself more and more from her family. And I've even heard people say that she's wanting to go by Ivanka Kushner now, not Ivanka Trump.
Like nobody
So
would
she's even
know.
trying to shell that name. Right. It's like, hey, I don't think that's a good idea because Kushner's not going to be worth anything much longer, anyways, after they figure out that 2 billion.
Yeah, that's a little shady, and I'm sure they're going to find something out about that. I think that um, Jack Smith and Fonnie Willis, they want to nail Donald Trump as quickly as they can because of the time sensitivity with the election. But I really believe with all the people that are involved, and assuming there are some members of Congress that ultimately get indictments from Jack Smith, these cases could go on for the next 5 years. Literally, they could go on for the next 5 years. And it doesn't really matter as long as Donald Trump gets done first. But there's going to be a lot of court time by a lot of people in this country for the next 3 to 5 years. Gotta be.
I wouldn't be even surprised if we're still discussing everything come the end of the decade.
Yeah. Yeah, no
And
question.
because because and I one thing I've thought is I think him going after Trump first and it cutting the head off that snake, what that does is it lines up all of his co-conspirators. It's like he was the head of your organization and he's guilty.
Yeah.
How are you going to plead innocent?
Well, and that's why the Mark Meadows in the federal case has rolled. For Mark Meadows to get full immunity, that's crazy. That's unusual. I mean, there have been immunity deals given before, but there's still some jail time involved. Like with Weisselberg, he got 5 months, but he probably
Right.
could have done 20 years. The only reason he did 5 months is because he gave something up. That's why when people tell me, oh, Donald Trump will just cut a deal, what's he got to deal? He's the head of the snake, as you said. He's got nobody to flip
Yeah.
on. He's the target. He ain't going to have an
And
opportunity.
Meadows has sold the farm.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It'll be interesting to see what Meadows does in Georgia, though, because he's indicted now and he's supposed to be going to trial. Will he roll? I mean, it seems ridiculous to flip in the federal case, but not in Georgia. But maybe Fonnie Willis isn't giving him the opportunity.
Yeah, who knows? And I get the feeling that he will roll eventually. I think it's just lining up. I think that's why he wanted to push to get it moved to federal, because then he would know his immunity would cover it. But he's not getting that. And so now he has to deal with the reality of that these people are they want their pound of flesh out of this. This hurt the country, and the country wants its pound of flesh back.
Yeah, absolutely. You know how they used to say that, well, if we go after the president and indict him and charge him and all this stuff, it would hurt the country. It would make it divisive. I'm at the point right now where I think just the opposite is true. If these people aren't held accountable, that will create the divisiveness and the chaos and um, the tumult in this country. They've we all know too much. I mean, in years gone by, there may have been crimes, but we didn't know all the facts. Well, we do know all the facts right now. And as you say, people want a fucking pound of flesh.
And had they dealt with this back with Nixon, they probably wouldn't have needed to give such a large chunk of flesh in the end,
Right.
because we probably wouldn't have had Iran Contra. We probably wouldn't have had Ronald Reagan. And another term of Carter sounded like it would be a pretty good idea at the time.
And Clinton probably would have done it in the limo as opposed to the Oval Office. So that would have been better. But no, I think it goes back to Nixon.
Or he would have been able to, or he would have been able to get away with it like Kennedy did.
Yeah, no shit. But I think it does go back to Nixon and him getting the pardon from Gerald Ford. They always talk about setting bad precedents. That was bad precedents, and that's costing us now because they let a criminal president off the hook, and then after that, it was just considered that presidents can get away with anything, and we need to put a stop to that because as we go on in time, there's more possibility of criminal presidents. And as long as we have criminal presidents, we have a dirty fucking government and it's not working the way it's supposed to be working.
Yeah, and had they dealt with it, yeah, a lot of people would have gone to jail, but the headlines would have died down a lot quicker because it wouldn't be like it is now where there is a camera on every street corner and everybody knows everybody's business. They would have been able to excise the problem without blowing the whole party up.
Exactly. And, I think that's part of the reason why we are having the troubles we are with the Republicans. In years gone by, we saw it with Nixon when the Republicans just bailed on him and said, you got to fucking resign. The Republicans told him that. But nowadays, these people have stuck with Donald Trump, the whole MAGA bullshit, 7 years after the fact. That's crazy. No time in history would people have stuck with a loser like this or something that's going to bring down the party, but they refuse to do anything but double down. That's the most confounding thing I see. Common sense and logic from an adult would tell you not to do that, but they still do.
And it's worked in the past and they don't understand why it's not working now. They keep trying to get a narrative going, try to spin one up, and it dies on its face because unlike back then where they could spin up a plausible narrative to be like, okay, pardon and let's move on. Everybody knows we had real time be able to look up everything. So when somebody is like, oh, I never said that. Oh, yeah, you did. Here's all the times you said it.
Yeah, I mean,
and it's not like you have to be a news source anymore to look that up.
No, I mean, you can go online right now and look at all the documents from the January 6th committee. It's fucking everything.
Exactly. Yeah, and how he's like, I don't have all the information. It's like, yeah, you do because we all do.
Yeah, we all know. It's not hard to find. And then we go down to Florida. We have this Aileen Cannon, this judge down there that's considering delaying his trial. They want to delay it till after the election. And, frankly, I don't think that makes much difference because I don't think he'll be the nominee. But everybody's kind of upset about Aileen Cannon continuing to sidle up with Donald Trump and be deferential to him. A lot of people are worried about that now. I'm not as worried about it because there's so much other shit that if that doesn't happen for 3 years, Donald Trump's going to be done anyway. And secondly, Jack Smith, if I'm pitting Jack Smith against Aileen Cannon about getting something done, I'm saying there's no fucking competition. Jack has had to have predicted all the things she's going to do and already has a strategy to handle her. And I think she's going to be handled here pretty soon. I think something's going to happen. It's going to go to the 11th Circuit and they're going to attempt to kick her out. They just want to trap her with enough shit to make it stick the first time. That's my perception of it.
And it goes back to you don't piss off a judge. If you're going to take a swipe at a judge and take her to the 11th Circuit, you better be ready to take her down. Otherwise, you shot your shot and now you don't. Now they'll just say, oh, you're just bringing it up because you want revenge.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely right. But are you worried about that case down in Florida?
Not really. A lot of that case is so much of it is secret and everything. I don't think we'll ever know the full broad strokes of that entire case, anyways. I'm
Probably
surprised
not.
that case even has any public attention as it is.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they don't keep that thing really quiet. But when she shot from the hip last year and got her ass handed to her by the 11th Circuit by appointing that special master and everything, I think a lot of her decisions why she's taking so long is because she's trying to find the best way to carry water for Donald Trump without bringing the ire of the 11th Circuit down on her.
But don't you think Donald Trump and Aileen Cannon understand that even if she is successful at carrying this water for Donald Trump, it really makes no fucking difference? I mean, it doesn't stop the trial in Georgia. It doesn't stop the trial in DC. It doesn't stop the lawsuit in New York. I mean, those three things alone can bury him. Like I say, they by the time they do something with that documents case, they're going to have to go in with a spatula and take him off the cell floor to bring him to court. He's going to be destroyed by that time. That's why I don't really worry about it too much. I trust Jack Smith is going to kick some ass. And you can only take Donald Trump down so many times, and you can only put him in jail for so long. And what's left sitting there, like the DC one starting in March, that's enough to put him away. There's no question about it.
And that's why I do think that one thing that Jack Smith is doing, it or at least it feels like in that case in Florida, is I wonder if that's why he brought the two secondary indictments. I forget what they're called. When they brought Walt Nada into the indictment,
Right.
and when they brought the De Olivero into the indictment, I think that was Jack Smith more shifting his focus to those two,
Right.
because he knows he's going to rip them apart up in DC, and what's, like you said, what's happening in Georgia, what's happening in New York is going to crush him anyways. So let's shift that case a little bit more away from him and go after the people that are going down with him, that he's just going to be a tag along eventually, because like you said, he's going to be so broken of a person that he won't know what to do anymore.
Well, if Jack Smith really wants to pursue the documents case intensely, all he has to do is bring an indictment from New Jersey for dissemination of top secret documents in that situation. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's part of upcoming superseding indictments. They just pull out New Jersey. Okay, Aileen, you want to fuck around down here? I'll nail him up in Jersey. And he's not going to get a favorable judge in New Jersey.
And with that, one thing I wonder, I don't know how federal cases work. I would wonder if he brought that secondary indictment in New Jersey, and if that makes it, since it's pretty much the same case in two different jurisdictions, if that means they could combine it into one in DC.
That's possible. I knew there was some issue about the documents case and why they brought it down to Florida. Seemed like a mistake, but they could have done it in DC, but there might have been some leverage for Donald Trump's team to fuck with a little bit. And they just said, we're not going to give them that opportunity. We're going to do it in Florida. Now, the interesting thing about the DC thing, where Donald Trump is the only indicted person at this point, there'll be more, but they have scheduled, Judge Chutkin has scheduled it for March, early March. And it doesn't seem as though she's budging on that. They can come in and say, we need to delay it. And she's saying, fuck that. She's even saying that if you don't shut your mouth, we'll move it up a bit. She's already kind of hinting at that, because they're going to start pulling together the jury in early February. We're in November now. November, December, January. We're talking 3 months away. They are going to start bringing the jury together to start the trial in March. And she doesn't sound like she's fucking bending at all. That trial's going to start in March. And that may be the one that brings him down hard.
Yeah, and it seemed not only that, in come January, both sides have to have their questions that they would present to prospective
Right.
juries, and come December, he wants to know, are you going to use the defensive or advice of counsel defense? So we can crush you there too. It's like every direction he goes, he gets crushed. And some of that, it reminds me a little bit of my ex, my eldest's mother. And when her and I got divorced, after the divorce, she brought me back in to try to I got custody of him. And so she tried to bring me back in to get custody stripped from me and give him to her. And after she lost, the judge admonished her, the judge tore her apart and took even more time away from her for bringing in this frivolous case in front of her. And as soon as it was ended, my lawyer actually heard my ex say, I can't believe they brought me in for this. Like I was the one that started it. It's like, you can twist and dilute your reality, but reality is still reality.
Right. Right. And it's all about projection with these folks. And it doesn't say much about your son's mother if she didn't get custody. It's got to be pretty apparent.
And that was while I was still presenting mail.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's unusual.
And this was early 2000s. So this was still when the tender years doctrine was not enforced in Michigan. And the tender years doctrine just in Michigan just said a neglected mother is better than an attentive father.
Yeah.
And I wanted custody. It cost me $45,000 to do it, but I got custody. And the fact that she didn't, everybody was like, man, she must have been a real piece of work. And it's like, oh yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like she was a piece of work. Now that son's a full-grown adult now, right?
Yes, he's an adult. He's a cook at some restaurants. He's going to be going to culinary school, and
Nice.
he cooks me nice meals sometimes.
Nice. Yeah, that's a great field. As I sit and watch the cooking shows, I go, I'd like to do that, but it's really not me to do that. But I do like cooking now and again. Does he have any connection with his mom now that he's an adult?
No,
Really?
no, he hasn't spoken to her since he was 16 years old.
Wow.
Because he wanted a job. She didn't want him to have a job because she was like, then you can't come visit me. And he's like, you don't have me come visit you anyway, so screw off. And
Yeah.
they haven't basically spoken since, because she was like, you're ungrateful, and just attacked him for stating he just wanted a job.
Wow. Yeah, it's about control. It's about control. There's no question about it. Now, how do you think things are going to play out over the next 12 months? You've got an election, you've got trials, you've got lawsuits. I see nothing but bad for Republicans. There is nothing they're going to be able to hang their hat on. They've got a Speaker of the House that's got these weird ideas, but has zero power to get anything done. Let's talk about the budget thing. This is going to be the most contentious thing coming up. They needed a Speaker of the House to get this budget thing done so the country doesn't shut down. We know if the country shuts down or the government shuts down, it's going to be hung on the Republicans because it's their fault. Now, this guy's in a bit of a quandary. He's a MAGA freak all the way. But if he sides with MAGA completely, he's never going to cut a deal with Biden because Biden's too smart for the motherfuckers. Do you think they'll come up with a continuing resolution or something. And if they do, is it going to piss off MAGA?
Oh yeah. I think because if he doesn't negotiate with Biden, the government shuts down. It's on him.
Right.
If he does negotiate with Biden, MAGA's pissed. They call for it, vote for his head on the chopping block.
Right.
It's like you're in the same position as McCarthy, and you thought this was a good idea.
Yeah. Do you think when we're talking about Democrats in the House and maybe even Joe Biden to a certain extent, I've heard people say, well, why didn't they do this or why didn't they do that? I get the impression that Democrats are content with just sitting back with their arms folded and watching the motherfuckers implode. They know they aren't going to get anything done anyway. Just let the Republicans destroy themselves and take it all away in 2024. That's the sense I get from Democrats these days.
Yeah, I think the Democrats will do just enough to not let it all descend into full-blown anarchy.
Right.
And I think they have their contingencies in the Republican Party. I get that feeling that I know there's no moderate Republicans anymore, but I'm sure they have their little contingencies if the ultimate worst came to pass. But Tony Michaels puts it the right way. You never take the shovel out of a person's hand when they're digging their own grave.
That's true. That's true.
Hell, you back up a backhoe and and give them some power equipment to do it faster.
And, I get the sense that's what's been going on for the last couple of years since they lost, Donald Trump lost. For whatever reason, everything they do seems to be counterproductive. Everything they do seems to go against their better interests. And for the life of me, I still don't understand why. I almost get the impression it's stubbornness and the refusal to admit you're wrong. We've all known people like that. They will fall off a cliff because they refuse to admit they're wrong. And it's so self-defeating. It's unbelievable.
Old saying, pride goeth before the fall. And these people are lined up for a fall, but they don't think that they're going to fall because they think everything that they have been approved and ordained by their higher power. So they believe if God stands with us, who can stand against us? And it's like, you don't realize that the God you're thinking of isn't standing with you anymore.
No, I think that's the thing that frustrates me the most when they keep calling out God and standing behind it and doing these egregious things and saying it's in the name of God. It's just fucking insulting. They don't grasp what it is. I mean, if you believe in a God, these people are the types of people that God's going to kick their ass because they're totally the opposite of what it's supposed to be. But they try to gain credibility. Well, I stand with God. I'm a patriot. Well, nothing you do suggests that. How do you expect to make us believe this if everything you do is contrary to what you claim to be?
Yeah, and they talk out of both sides of their face. They say they believe one thing and do another, and that their God stands with them, but they just keep, like you say, digging deeper and deeper and deeper into this delusion that they're in, and they've lost the plot.
Right.
Is one of the best analogies I can think of, because they're just off the rails. They're flailing in every possible direction and not getting anywhere, and they just can't accept that they're going down.
Leading up
and
to
I don't understand why either.
It makes no sense. It's absolutely ignorant for them to do that. leading up to 2015, I think there's a lot of old white men, old white straight men, that would have told you, well, racism's really getting better, or the treatment of folks in the LGBTQ community. We've become more tolerant. Everything is better. And it's my contention it never got better. It's just that these people kept quiet, stayed under their rocks because they knew they wouldn't be considered appropriate. Donald Trump comes in, makes it cool and okay for everybody to come out and say whatever they want, spew their hate. Is that something you noticed as somebody who was part of that community when it was supposed to have been better? Did you feel like it was better?
No. And I think that's one of the things that kept me from coming out, was because I was so scared of all the things I saw and all the things I heard. Because I remember 90s and 2000s, gay bashing was very much a real thing.
Yeah, I think they were going to make it an Olympic
and people
sport.
are like,
It was that fucking bad.
right. And it's like, people are like, well, we haven't had full-blown race riots since the 70s. I know it's not the case, but they'll try to make that argument that all went away. It's like, no,
Right.
you guys just shifted your focus a little bit because it became too hard to hate that group. So
Yeah.
you shifted your focus to the next group. And once it becomes too hard to hate that group, you'll shift your focus to the next group.
You can't always tell what's in somebody's heart by what they say, because people tend to lie and they will couch whatever they're feeling and say the right thing because they're afraid of retribution or embarrassment or something like that. But those feelings in the hearts of these racists and these homophobes and whatever you want to call them, they haven't changed at all. And I think the best we can hope for right at this point is not to eradicate them or change their minds. I don't think that's possible. The only thing we can do is put them back under their rocks and keep them quiet. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Hopefully I'm wrong, but I don't see these people changing their minds because they just refuse to do it.
They're not going to change their minds, but they're going to be pushed under their rocks. And everybody's like, when Trump won, they're like, oh yeah, now we can be all me. It's like, the only thing he did was shine. He brought the spotlight on you.
Right.
He allowed you guys to come out into the light of day, and now we all know who you are. I mean, I see Trump, just a handful of Trump flags out and about, and most of the people where I live, those people are not welcome in most areas. Most businesses will not work with them if they put up, like, there was some businesses that were putting up in 2022 about the abortion thing and everything like that, and a lot of them never recovered. Their entire business was destroyed and we had a salon owner up here attack trans people, and her business is gone now.
Right. Isn't it ironic that when those types of people try to be anti-vaxxers or homophobic or racist, what ended up happening to them is what they were trying to do to the people they hated. They were trying to run them out of town, run them out of business, make their lives hell. But in the end, it was them that ended up paying that price. Now that seems like what's the word I'm looking at? Karma, maybe. It's not the word I was looking at, but it's ironic that they have to deal with now the very thing they were trying to do. That seems like poetic justice.
I've always said karma is a cruel, cruel bitch goddess.
It is, and it's always good. It's always good to see it.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of I tried to get in my life is I feel that the positive changes in my life come from a more positive outlook and a more loving and accepting outlook on life, which has led me to be a better person, which Now I have a job that I really love. My family's great. I get to spend time with my kids and everything. And it seems like more and more people are living their authentic lives, and it's happening younger and younger and younger. And people are like, well, people are coming out as trans and younger ages. It's like because they're finally feeling safe to. Had I had a safe environment to become who I was back then, I would have.
So you feel a lot safer now in your community after coming out and transitioning? You feel safer now? You don't worry about things day to day like you once did?
I worry about different things. I
Really?
worry about things that I can control now. I don't, I try not to worry about what I can't control, like these bigoted, homophobic idiots. I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to change their minds, but there's enough of us screaming back against them that they're all running off into the corners of the internet again and to the corners of their lives and playing victim. And they're
Right.
just going to keep doing that. And it's like, okay, fine, you can play victim all you want over there in the corner.
Right. Well, there's a lot of room for hate out there. Obviously the LGBTQ people of color, but in terms of the political thing, it's been amazing how there is so much hate there between Republicans and Democrats, or me and anybody that's connected to the Republicans. Those people that get through, and there's not many that get through, are very angry with me. They say horrible things. And my wife is upset about it. She goes, I feel bad that they're calling you these names. And I don't really care. Actually, I'm glad I'm fucking with their head. I'm glad they're mad at me. I said something on the podcast and on TikTok. We were talking about the Hamas Israeli war, and I didn't pose any opinions. And then somebody said, I disagree with you. I go, how can you disagree with me if I didn't have a fucking opinion? But I pointed something out. People will come out on TikTok or on the podcast and they will say things, and they'll do it out of emotion, and then they'll say something they regret. They'll get called out, and now they're going to have to go with a bowed head and retract what they may have said. And I said very specifically, I think about what I'm going to say. I do have a bit of a filter, having been on the radio for many years. I know where to go and where not to go. And what I say, I truly mean. But I told people, I said, if you're listening to me on TikTok or in the podcast and you are mad at me about something or offended about something I said, understand this. I fucking meant to do it. I stand by what I say. And if you're offended by what I have to say, too fucking bad. I meant to do it. I'm not going to walk it back. I'm not going to
Yeah,
let you shame me on
if,
this.
if they're too offended and they have to lash out at you on personal things and personal insults and calling names and everything, that means you won
Yeah,
because they've lost all ability to argue the point.
right. I remember one time this is way back when I was working, and this woman who didn't particularly like me because I think she thought I was too outspoken, and that's fine. That's her thing. She came up to me and said, what you said offended me. I said, really? I said, well, let me tell you this. I'm offended by the fact that you're offended. And she goes, that's ridiculous. And I go, well, I'm glad we're on the same page. I'll see you later. And that's the point. There is no rule or law or anything in the Constitution that we have a right not to be offended. There is so many things in this world that are offensive. There's the treatment of people. There's the abuse of children. There's war. There's all these things. I'm offended by a lot of things, but instead of curling up in a ball saying, oh, I'm the victim, do fucking something about it. And I think so many people are so set on, they're actually just searching for things to be mad about, searching for things to be offended about, instead of being proactive and doing about something about the things that make you angry. I don't understand that at all.
Yeah, and it goes back to what we said at the beginning. This Israel and Hamas thing. going on the internet and saying, I'm not going to vote for Biden or I'm not going to vote, you're not doing anything. You're just on there pissing and moaning. It's like,
Right.
do something. Start making phone calls. Start calling your representatives. Call your congressmen. Call your senators, local, everybody. Send letters to people that even are your congressmen
Right.
and tell these people what you want, what you think.
Well,
That's how you affect change, not
people have asked me that too, doing the TikToks and the podcast. To go, what do you think you're accomplishing? Do you think you're going to change anything? I go, I don't know if I'm going to change anything, but I'm doing the only thing I can do that I have the ability to do. The Republicans have carried the narrative, were louder and pushing it on people. So I thought I'd turn it back on them. I don't know if it's going to do any good. The only way it does any good is if I say something and then somebody else says something and then two other people say something. It's about starting the ball rolling and starting a different kind of narrative, a true and factual and decent narrative, as opposed to the shit that we've listened to for 20 years. So, I mean, we can't all fix everything, but we got to try.
And I've encouraged people to start listening to podcasts, your podcast, Tony Michaels, if they want something a little much more edgier and hardcore. Tony Michaels does a really good job of that.
No, I like Tony.
Yeah, I encourage people to start listening to these things because you're getting a person's actual direct perspective. It's like we have the internet, the ability to have these conversations over the internet. We need to have these conversations. We need to discuss these subjects and stop and like with the right, they don't want to have these conversations. They want to plug their ears and go back to the 1950s when they had all the power. It's like,
right.
You can't go back. You'll never have it back. They keep saying, well, the first thing bad thing that happens when you took prayer out of schools. It's like prayer was never technically in schools.
I never prayed in school.
We just made it. Yeah, I never prayed in school. We had prayer groups in our school, but nobody cared. It's like you're not pissed off that there's no prayer in school. You're pissed off that the schools have to recognize other religions too.
You know, when I first started this, I heard the Democrats, taking the higher road and turning the other cheek. And I knew that wasn't going to work. So I thought I'd just go out there and be loud and proud and see what happens. And I was overjoyed to find other people on TikTok that took a similar tack, whether it be Tony Michaels or Hawk or Tom Colbert or Tom Powell or whoever. It's about time that people of a like mind, people of a reasonable mind, a compassionate mind, stood up and pushed back. That's what we needed to do. And I think since the election in 2020, there's been a lot of ground made up by people putting that into the ether and getting more and more people saying, fuck this, I'm not taking this shit. And that's really what it needs to be done. And I've told people that over the next year, we've got to make it louder and we've got to be stronger. It's going to take more work to keep this noise going. We've got to drown them out until they are fucking gone. Otherwise, they'll come back and metastasize like fucking cancer if you leave even one of them.
Yeah, and the whole when they go low, we go high. It's like, yeah, in a morally equal world, that is the better way to go. But these people aren't fighting with morals.
No.
These people, and one thing my dad always said to me when I was growing up, he's like, you never throw the first punch, but if they throw the punch, you put them down and you make sure they stay there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's a good point too, with the likes of Donald Trump or the Republican Party. We have to make sure when we put them down, and I'm not talking violence or anything, but when we put them down, we've got to finish it, because they will creep back up and jump on your back or haunt you until they are put down permanently. So there's no reason to go easy or let up on anybody. We need to bury these fucks. We need them out of Congress. We need them out of the White House. Otherwise, we will never heal this country and never correct what's going on in our government.
Yeah, and I know it sounds strange, but I think we're going to look back in time and see that Donald Trump winning in 2016 and the Republicans just squeaking out in 2022 with the House are probably two of the best things that'll, in the long term, could happen to this country because now we know who to punch and
I
who to knock
agree.
down
I
and
agree.
and how to keep them down.
A lot of these problems have always been there. The one thing that Donald Trump did is he brought them to the surface for all to see. And then now that they're there for all to see, we can do something about it. You're right. We now have somebody that we know who needs to be punched. So yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. And that is the upside of Donald Trump and the Republicans and what's going on in the House. They're being exposed for who they are. They can't hide anymore. It's right out there, all warts and all, and we can see who the fuck they are. Well, I tell you what, Maddie, we're going to wrap things up. We went long as we do. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that, and I think Gen Z is playing a part in it all too, with the fact that they've been traumatized by all this, so they got the message and they know what to do now, and they seem to be they seem to be helping a lot of us out.
They seem to be a little militant, and I'm proud of them for doing that. Hopefully that will carry through to the 2024 election. And I can't wait till millennials like yourself or Gen Zs take control of what's going on in politics. I've said this before. I'm a boomer. I'm 63 years old. At this stage of the game, now that you've come of age and you're adults like my sons and such, people like me should not be determining what your future is. You should be determining that. So that's why we need a youth movement in fucking politics. We got to get the old fucks out of there.
And I get the feeling that when millennials and Gen Z are all done working together to get the old fucks out, millennials are gonna be like, "Here, Gen Z, have the keys.
Yeah,
You guys can run the country now. It's all yours.
exactly.
I'm done. I want out."
And people say, do you really think it's going to be better when the millennials and Gen Zs take over? I say, I don't know how it could be fucking worse. And it's their future. It's not ours.
Go up.
You know, I mean, someone said, what are you going to do if the millennials and the Gen Zs get mad at Joe Biden and vote for Donald Trump and Trump wins in 2024? At that point, I got to throw up my hands and say, look, I'm going to be dead when it gets really bad. I'm going to live my life. If that's what you wanted, you're going to have to deal with this fucking problem long after I'm gone. And God help you with it, because this is a mistake. But I don't think in my wildest dreams that that's going to happen. I think,
no, they lived through enough hell over from 2018 on. They've seen all this. They were in high school through COVID and everything. It's like they're hurting. They're pissed.
Yeah, they are pissed, and they're tired of a fucking old people, and so am I. I'm tired of old people.
Yep.
Except the old people that listen to the podcast. These are people of a reasonable mind. All right, Maddie. Well, thank you for coming in today. You're, as always, listeners are always a big help when I'm trying to do the podcast. You make it a lot easier. You have some great insights, perspective. Thank you very much for coming in today and helping out.
Promise I won't wait another year.
Definitely don't wait. I've said this before, and I'll say it to you again in case there's any confusion. Don't wait for an invitation. I'm not sending out invitations because I don't know what your schedule is. But when you have time and you have a mind to, just send me an email and we'll put you on. And, if you tell me Monday that you can be on Wednesday, you'll be on. Half the time people call me and say at 8:00 on Monday and say, yeah, can I come on some point? I go, yeah, how about fucking tonight? So, we try to get people on as quickly as possible, read the emails and do that stuff, because what the input that the listeners have is just as, if not more important than what I'm saying. It's about a community with the same mindset, pushing the same views out there. That's how it's going to work. I can't I can't do it alone. I need a crowd of people, from millennials to boomers to even older than that. I've got some old people listening. So that's how we're going to win this thing. And I appreciate you participating.
Absolutely. Glad to do it. And I'm ready for the fight to come.
Sounds
But we
good.
need to make sure we're having the fights that we can have now and not the fights that we can have in a year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're going to kick some old white folks' ass. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Maddie, thanks very much for coming in. For those of you listening, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.